Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today the first quarter in the NHL is just about up, and we've got about 20 games under our belts. So let's see those standings. Let's see those stats. Who's doing well? Who's doing poorly? And guys, thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports. Make sure you check out our YouTube page down below, youtube.com/NHL on I-80 Sports. And comment down below with how you feel teams are doing at the beginning of this season. Who is running away with their divisions and who is falling behind quickly? Let us know. Join the conversation down below. Drop a like if you like our content as well. And subscribe. And hit the bell notification so that way you guys know when our content goes live. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Tom, how you doing today?
Doing well, and here we are. Believe it or not, one quarter of the way through the season. Some surprises, some not so surprises, some very big, I'd say personnel changes, if you want to term it that way, and one glaring disappointment.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be getting into that glaring disappointment. But first, let's talk about the standings in the NHL and how it currently sits at the moment. So I'm going to be sharing to our screen here the standings courtesy of NHL.com. So let's take a look at how things are moving and shaking out, shall we? So looking at the Atlantic Division first, we got the Toronto Maple Leafs sitting pretty in first place. Now, stark contrast to where we saw last time on our show. 26 points for the Toronto Maple Leafs to start off the season with 20 games played. Florida is right on their tail with 25 points as well. Both teams over the last 10 games are pretty comparable at the moment. Tampa Bay Lightning sitting at 21 points in third place in the Atlantic. Buffalo coming back slowly but surely in fourth place with 19 points, but tied for them right now. A team that we'll be talking about in a little bit. The Boston Bruins also with 19 points. In sixth place right now, we've got the Ottawa Senators with 17 points, and tied currently for last place, the Detroit Red Wings and the Montreal Canadiens with 16 points. Looking on down to the Metropolitan Division, in first place right now, the Carolina Hurricanes sit pretty right now with 28 points in 18 games played. Hot on their tails, though, surprisingly, are the Washington Capitals with 27 points. But we'll talk about why that luck might change soon. In third place, we've got the New Jersey Devils with 26 points. And in fourth place, the New York Rangers with 25 points. Four of the strongest teams in the NHL currently sit in the Metropolitan Division, and it makes hockey that much more fun for the Metropolitan. In fifth place, we've got the New York Islanders with 19 points. In sixth place, tied right now for sixth and seventh, is the Philadelphia Flyers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And pulling up the rear in eighth place is the Columbus Blue Jackets with 16 points. Going on down to the Western Conference, we're starting in the Central Division. The clear number one team in the NHL right now, the first place Winnipeg Jets with 32 points. It's wild to think that they are still doing so hot at the moment. They are 16-3. And even though they've cooled off slightly, they're still the best team in the NHL. In second place, the Minnesota Wild with 27 points. In third place, the Dallas Stars with 24 points. The Colorado Avalanche slowly but surely pulling themselves out of the weeds as well. 20 points for them in fourth place. Utah Hockey Club and St. Louis Blues sit in fifth and sixth place respectively with 17 points. In seventh place in the Central, a team that we'll be talking about a decent amount in this episode, the Nashville Predators with 15 points. And pulling up the rear in the Central Division, the Chicago Blackhawks with 13 points. They are currently sitting in dead last place in the NHL right now. So you got the number one team in the NHL and the number 32 team in the NHL sitting in the Central Division right now. That is how big of a separation we've got. In the Pacific Division, rounding us out right now, An even tighter race, honestly, in the Pacific. The Pacific Division might be the most fun division in hockey right now to watch. In first place, we got the Vegas Golden Knights with 24 points. In second place and third place, respectively, the Calgary Flames and Los Angeles Kings with 23 points each. Hot on their tails also is the Edmonton Oilers with 22 points, and hot on their tails as well, in fifth and sixth place, respectively, are the Vancouver Canucks and Seattle Kraken with 21 points. In seventh place, you got the Anaheim Ducks with 18 points. And in eighth place, the San Jose Sharks pull up the rear with 16 points. So, Tom, I'm going to start here with you with these standings here. What jumped out to you as a good surprise, and then one jumped out to you as a wow, like bad surprise, like worrisome style of surprise?
Well, there's two huge. I'm going to go backwards actually, if I can.
Go for it.
Two huge worrisome surprises here. One not so huge is the Detroit Red Wings. I expected a lot more out of this team. I did. You have the young players, you have the young talent there in Dylan Larkin and Alex DeBrincat. Not even young anymore. They're borderline veterans now. You have Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko. You have Lucas Raymond. You have Mo Seider on the point. You have Andrew Kopp and JT Conference, your solid third and fourth line centers. Tyler Mott on your fourth line. Goaltending, okay. Alex Lyon and Cam Talbot, so. Now, I look at this Atlantic division. I almost called it the Northeast division. I forgot what year I was in. I look at this. I just don't understand how they're under 500 in what is a weaker division. How Buffalo is 500 doing better than them. How, Ottawa is doing better than them. I expected a lot more out of these Red Wings. I did. I thought that the Red Wings, would bring in these two veterans. They had Kane last year. You brought in Tarasenko. They went on a run last year. They probably should have made the playoffs last year. They had a bad middle of winter. And it just doesn't seem to be working over there for them. And is it time to fire Derek Lalonde? Or maybe is it time to send Steve Yzerman out of town? I don't know. But if Detroit doesn't pick it up, and they don't pick it up soon, there's going to be some issues. They're going to be sellers at the deadline again. They're going to be selling a Tarasenko. They're going to be selling a Patrick Kane. They might be selling an Andrew Kopp. It's going to be very interesting to see where these Red Wings go. The only caveat I can give the Red Wings is this. Now, I look at this, at the standings. Now, obviously, you're in the Atlantic, Toronto, Florida, and Tampa. I mean, those are your stalwarts right there. There's no doubt about it. Now, you look at the Atlantic right now. Carolina, Washington Devils, and the Rangers holding down the first wild card. Now, we're going to talk about Washington a little bit later. But I would say Carolina, Washington, and the Rangers, are in. So you're 6 spots right now in the East. I'm not going to say it now because we're right around Thanksgiving and whatnot. But I'd say that's a pretty solid prediction for your 6 spots right there. The only thing I could say for Detroit is this. Depending on what happens with Washington, I will say that final wild card spot is open season right now for the East. Now, if they can get to there's still a slight chance for them to get to that spot. But if they keep playing the way they do, they're not going to have a prayer. They really need to improve to get to that spot. I said in our season preview, I expected a lot more out of the Detroit Red Wings. I expected them to finally turn the corner and make the playoffs this year. And right now, they sit tied for last place in the Eastern Conference. And that's just not good enough with the personnel that they have over there in Detroit. Now, while we're on worrisome, let's get to our obvious elephant in the room. A team that made a big splash this summer. A team that in a copycat league did a copycat thing. Southern team. I don't know per se if Tennessee is a no-tax state or not, a no-state income tax state, but I would assume taxes are fairly low to play in Nashville. A team that tried to do what Vegas did and what Florida did. And tried to basically solve their problems by spending a lot of money in a Southern state and bringing in 2 really good players. 2 superstars. And that team is the Nashville Predators. This is glaringly bad. Glaringly bad. You look up and down this lineup right now. You brought Stamkos and Marchessault in to solidify that 4th line with Tommy Novak. Right now, Tommy Novak's on the 3rd line. Jonathan Marchessault is on the 3rd line. Steven Stamkos, nobody even knows what the hell position he plays anymore. The guy came up as a center, 1 Stanley Cups as a right winger in Tampa. The 2 he won back-to-back as captain of the team. He's playing left wing right now with Colton Sissons and Phil Tomasino. I don't understand this. You brought in Brady Shea, Roman Josi are still your first pair. You signed UC Saros to that team-friendly deal. And right now, you look at this team, 6-11-3. 6-11-3. You brought in 2 guys, and I'm not even going to compare them to the Rangers back in the day who brought in guys past their prime. You brought in 2 guys who are still very much in their prime, who have won Stanley Cups recently, who were huge. One was a captain of his team. The other one was a Conn Smythe winner. Huge parts of their team to bring this team over the hump in what was a tight Central Division. They have done nothing. On top of it all, you had Andrew Brunette as coach, who coached a freewheeling, high-octane Florida Panther team that won a President's Trophy back in 2022. They're not responding to him. I watched the game against Seattle last night for a little while after I got back from the rink late. They look lost out there. The whole team looks lost. They can't get out of each other's way. They don't know what to do in the defensive zone. They can't break a puck out. They can't regroup in the neutral zone. The only time they look any good is 3-on-3 when, they have a little more ice to work with, and Steven Stamkos looks like his old self when they're on a 3-on-3 in OT. The other night I watched the game against Colorado too. They made Alexander Georgiev look like his former backup, Igor Shesterkin. It's horrible. You know what I could compare this to if we have baseball fans on here? The 2002 New York Mets when they brought in Robbie Alomar, Mo Vaughn, and Jeremy Burnitz. And that team crashed and burned. And this is the same thing. And like those New York Mets, that year and the following year, Barry Trotz has basically made it a known fact that he said, if these guys don't get it together, I'm tearing this team apart. I'm rebuilding this team. Everybody's going. I'm done. They don't want to respond. I'm done. So it's going to be curious to see. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I can't see this going much longer. If they don't find a way to right this ship, and they don't find a way to right it soon, like in the next 10 games, you're going to start seeing a lot of movement in Nashville. And maybe it will be those guys that they just brought in a Stamkos or a March or so, going somewhere else. I don't know. Maybe it will be a Ryan O'Reilly going somewhere else. But this is not good enough. You bring those players in to turn the team around to potentially, I didn't say they were going to win a cup, but contend for a cup, maybe get to a finals at some point, and they're just straight up not doing it. And it's bad. It's glaringly bad. Glaringly bad. So I'm going to flip the coin now to the Wow side. Winnipeg Jets we spoke about. And the Winnipeg Jets just don't seem to want to quit. They look great against the Rangers. And let me give one guy in Winnipeg, tip my cap to one guy. And that player is Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor is looking like Cam Neely used to look for the Bruins back in the late 80s and early 90s. Kyle Connor is on fire for the Jets. 12 goals, 12 assists, 24 points in 19 games. Kyle Connor the other night, after Florida smacked them 5-0 on Saturday, Kyle Connor burned the Panthers on Tuesday. And I was watching the little bit of the game before I switched over to the Ranger game because the Rangers are playing in Vancouver. Burn the Panthers. He is on another level, Kyle Connor, this year. He really is.
Can I add on top of that too?
What's that?
Can I add on top of that too?
Yeah.
So with Kyle Connor, 24 points in the 19 games as well. There's another teammate of his that's also got him matched with the same exact identical stats, 12 goals, 12 assists in 19 games. Mark Scheifele. You got to give it to him too.
Yes.
Yeah, now, Mark Scheifele, he's been playing with a really good edge lately and staying out of the penalty box a lot more often now. And he's a lot more efficient than Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor has those 12 points and 70 shots on goal. Mark Scheifele's done it in 45, which is
Kyle
crazy.
Connor cannot wait, because if he keeps this up, cannot wait to see him play for Team USA in the Four Nations. And I cannot wait to see him, because you look at the way the D is set up with a lot of these teams. The U.S. has the strongest D core, like we previously alluded to. I can't wait to see him burning some guys. I mean, if you have him and Matthew Tkachuk on line one with a Jack Eichler and Austin Matthews, if I were Canada, Sweden, or Finland, I'd be scared to be staring that group down every other shift or every third shift. I would be very afraid of those two. So Winnipeg, yes. Another team that I completely wrote off. Carolina Hurricanes, man. The thing with the Hurricanes is this. They did, I guess we want to say, regress. And we said that the guys they brought in weren't good enough. But Jack Roslovic is having a hell of a year. And I was not his biggest supporter on the Rangers last year. I'm still happy they brought in Riley Smith. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong with Jack Roslovic. But the proof's in the pudding here with Jack Roslovic right now. 10 goals, 1 assist for 11 points. Where was this in playoffs last year for the Rangers? Especially against Florida. And those aforementioned Carolina Hurricanes who he plays for now. But I'll tell you what, man. Where did I have it? There it is. I'm sorry. 14-4 in 18 games, 28 points, leading the East. Carolina having a great start after we wrote them off. And I know I compare them to those old San Jose Sharks, but maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should compare them to your former team, not your former team, your favorite team, your New Jersey Devils back in those late 90s and early 2000s, where every time they would jettison off a guy and everybody said, oh, they're going to take a step back, and there they are in first place. Mm-hmm. But the caveat with the Hurricanes is this. We need to see them do something in the springtime because it seems as if every year they get there, whether it's they go big or whether it's they stick to the plan, they just seem to run out of gas every year. So, is this team going to be able to stick it out come the playoffs? Because don't get me wrong, they're playing well right now. You look up and down the depth chart and you have to stare down another team like a Rangers or a Panthers in a 7-game series. Is that going to be good enough to beat those guys? And I'll say another thing with Carolina right now too, is that, Freddie Anderson went down with an injury today. He's going to be missing some time. So it's going to be very curious to see with a two-headed tandem of Spencer Martin, Peter Kochetkov. Can the Canes keep this up? Can they keep this pace up, the Hurricanes? It's going to be very interesting to see. As far as my wow factor, I guess my only other one would potentially be the Minnesota Wild, 12-3-3 with 27 points. But Minnesota has Dallas hot on their tails, and Colorado is slowly starting to wake up as well. So Minnesota, I don't know if I'm sold on that bill of goods, at least just not yet. But Minnesota, I got to tip my cap to them. They're having a hell of a start too. But when you look at Minnesota, again, you look at their depth chart, it's a lot of work with Kirill Kaprizov. Although, tip my cap to Matt Boldy. I tip my cap to Marco Rossi. I do. But it's I got to see Minnesota. I got to see if they can keep it up.
Yeah. I'm going to go with wow factor since we're on that at the moment. And then I'll go and double back to cover my bases on teams that I'm a little bit worrisome about. Got to agree there with Minnesota. When I saw that they were sitting in second in the Central Division, I did a bit of a double take, but it also doesn't surprise me. They currently have one of the best goaltenders in the entire NHL in Philip Gustafsson. Philip Gustafsson currently sports a 2.07 goals against average, and he has been playing like a man possessed. In the save percentage department, he also has been no slouch. He's currently second in the entire league with a .926 save percentage. He has been a major difference maker for the Minnesota Wild to start the season. And a big reason why Minnesota currently sits in second place. They're a team that had Winnipeg not gotten off to such a strong start and historic start to start the year, we would be talking about the Minnesota Wild in first place in the Central Division right now instead of the Winnipeg Jets. Another team that I want to mention on my wow factor right now, with a little gloss of, maybe some concern to be left, is the Washington Capitals. The Washington Capitals currently sit in second place in the Metropolitan Division. So very surprisingly, but I guess what's not as surprising has been the career renaissance of Alex Ovechkin, who currently leads the league with 15 goals in 18 games played. It feels like we're back in the early 2010s talking about Ovechkin leading the league. And I didn't think we would, see this again. Unfortunately, it was announced that Alex Ovechkin has suffered a broken fibula and he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. And to me, as a person that's watched Alex Ovechkin throughout his entire career, that's gut wrenching to me. I know he's going to come back and I know, he's still going to be on that grind to catch Wayne Gretzky. But I can't help but think at his age, at 39, an injury like this only slows him down just that much more. And it has me a little bit concerned for the efficiency that he's going to get to this record. Because had he not gotten injured, we could be talking about the fact that Alex Ovechkin could break Wayne Gretzky's goal record in less games played than Wayne Gretzky, which would be
regular season goal record.
Regular season goals,
by the way.
Regular season goals, yes.
Regular season NHL goals. Let's not blow this up more than it needs to be. Because people, and it's I don't even mean to harp on this, but I was talking with my boss today, and he goes, "He's the best ever. How is he going to break the record?" I said, that record is regular season goals in the NHL. Gretzky played.
We're not talking WHA or WA or
not talking
AHL.
about the WHA, and not for nothing, not talking about the WHA. And I mean, if you add Ovechkin KHL totals, maybe it'll match up, but I doubt it. With playoffs, maybe it'll match up. But Gretzky went much further in the Stanley Cup playoffs than Ovechkin ever did. Remember, the guy only got past the second round one time in his entire career.
True. I mean, if we're also considering KHL stats, then we would also be considering Jagr in the Jaromir Jagr in the conversation as well, with how much time he spent there too.
Yeah, but he was old when he got there. Jagr was past 35 when he was in the KHL. Ovechkin, you know what? He didn't even play the KHL. He played in the Russian Super League. So,
true.
And the scoring's much lower over there too because you're playing on the bigger ice. So, just saying.
Yeah, true too. I mean, Gordie Howe also playing, for the Whalers for a little while there as well before they joined the NHL is, part of that conversation as well.
Well, like I said too, if we're talking about WHA, we mentioned it years ago. Bobby Hull actually held the professional goal record, not Phil Esposito. Bobby Hull scored 77 goals in the mid-70s after Phil Esposito scored 76 in 1972. So,
correct.
It doesn't matter. It's NHL goal record. I know a lot of people would be happy to see him break it, but don't think it's the overall goal record. That still belongs to number 99.
This sidebar is brought to you by Hockey Reference. Check it out. But yeah, I'm worried about the Washington Capitals going forward, missing Alex Ovechkin for 4 to 6 weeks. The rest of the team needs to step up on top. You do have contributors on this team, though. You have 3 players currently sitting at above a point per game. That's Dylan Strome with 28 points in 18 games. Who also sports the highest plus minus in the NHL with a plus 18 at the moment. Besides Alex Ovechkin, who has 25 points in 18 games as well. Connor McMichael has 19 points in 18 games. He also has 12 goals. So it's not like he's getting helpers here. A lot of these are goals that he's scoring. So if you are a Washington Capitals fan, you're hoping that Connor McMichael steps up, keeps scoring goals at the rate that he's scoring right now. But you look down the rest of the lineup, and the rest of the lineup needs to step up and in surrogate as well. First person I'm looking at that needs to step up and with Alex Ovechkin going down, though, is Pierre-Luc Dubois. 12 points in 18 games. He's off to a decent start, but he only has 1 goal. He has 11 assists, and it's great that he's providing helpers, but you got to find the back of the net for him. He can score goals. He's proven it before. So Pierre-Luc Dubois needs to step up here. Dylan Strome needs to find the back of the net a little bit more often. He's got 6 goals on the season thus far. But I think they could end up relying on getting some ticky-tack goals. Other people that I think need to step up with Ovechkin gone as well for a little while, Andrew Mangiapane. 8 points in 18 games, and we're not talking about that nearly as much right now because Washington is doing well. However, Mangiapane is a top 6 player. 8 points in 18 games is not quite cutting it in the top 6. So he's going to need to really step up with Alex Ovechkin going down. And actually, more than likely, both of those players that I just mentioned, Andrew Mangiapane and Pierre-Luc Dubois, both could be filling in on line 1 in Alex Ovechkin's left wing spot. So take your pick any given night. Dubois could fill in that space. Andrew Mangiapane could fill that space. But they also need to find that space on power play with him missing as well. Going to teams that now are I'm quite concerned of. I'll gloss over the Nashville Predators real quick just because Tom did a really good job of describing a lot of the problems in Nashville, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper on the stat side of things. I am a sucker when it comes to goal differential. And one concerning stat for me right now is the fact that the Nashville Predators currently sport a minus 18 goal differential. Uh, and that's shocking to me because I'm looking down at their stats, and by and large, Juuse Saros not having a horrible season by any means. He has a 916 save percentage at 2.52 goals against average. He's logged the most minutes in the entire NHL and also has the most shots on net in the entire NHL. So what's the problem here? Defense. The defense is not playing well in front of him at all. Just to kind of run down things, the only player realistically that's even remotely played somewhat well is Roman Josi, and he still has a minus 14 right now. 2 goals, 12 assists for 14 points on the season thus far, but this entire team is underperforming right now. Your top point getter right now is Philip Forsberg with 15 points in 20 games. This is a team that they don't gel together at all right now. They look like a team that was thrown together with no natural chemistry at the moment. And I don't know how much of that is coaching or how much of that is on the players. But the first scapegoat that's going to go in this situation is going to end up being Andrew Brunette. And I don't think he's the guy that needs to go here. Thus proven in Boston at the moment, the next team that I want to talk about here, Jim Montgomery. Can Jim Montgomery help the fact that he has no center depth? Can Jim Montgomery help the fact that they just sunk a ton of money into 2 lackluster players in Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov? No, Jim Montgomery couldn't help that. He can't lace up a pair of boots and change the scores himself. This Boston team right now, the Boston Bruins, are underperforming big time right now. Jeremy Swayman, look, I hope he enjoyed his training camp off because he's eating humble pie right now as one of the worst starting goaltenders in the entire NHL at the moment. Jeremy Swayman currently sports an .884 save percentage and a 3.47 goals against average. He looks like he hasn't, played 20 games in the NHL in his entire life. I'm not saying that he needed Linus Ullmark to succeed, but this was supposed to be the year that Jeremy Swayman kind of stepped out, and said, I am definitively the starting goaltender of the Boston Bruins. And not only just the starting goaltender, but the franchise goalie for the Boston Bruins. And he's not proving that right now. He's proving right now that training camp is so important for goaltenders. His holdout has completely screwed the Boston Bruins. His holdout lost Jim Montgomery a job. And Jim Montgomery's probably going to find a new head coaching job really, really quick. I wouldn't be surprised in the least bit if Nashville decides, you know what? Let's yank the plug. Pulls the plug and hires Jim Montgomery right now. It would not surprise me in the least if a struggling team like that just decides to, you know what? Let's flip the switch now.
Or even, you know what? I'm thinking about it now. What about Detroit? Detroit might not be a bad fit either.
Detroit would actually be a very good fit for Jim Montgomery. Very similar teams as well, similar defense. I think Jim Montgomery could do a lot with that Detroit Red Wings team if they decide to pull the plug on Lalonde right now.
Yeah. I mean, they said it was the players in Boston, and it didn't help. It didn't help his cause blowing that 3-1 lead versus Florida 2 years ago. It didn't help him, and it didn't help last year. And it's the two factors in my mind, and I don't mean to interrupt you. Blowing that 3-1 series lead to Florida, number one. Number two, blowing that division lead on the last day of the season last year as well. And those were the two big things. And with the team struggling now, I think they just said, you know what, enough's enough. We don't want to crash and burn anymore. But like I've always said, the Boston Bruins are an organization that always rebounds very quickly from things.
Yeah, and that's true. And look, Boston can ultimately find their way out of this pit. But I don't think the catalyst to that was firing Jim Montgomery in this situation. It's not like Edmonton last year firing Jay Woodcroft. I think Jim Montgomery has a little bit of a different pedigree in some ways. You can define me all you want on that one, Tom.
It's just I even look recently. The year that they let Claude Julien go in favor of Bruce Cassidy, that's what kind of turned the team around. Remember, Julien was kind of a stubborn coach. Cassidy let some of the younger players play, and that's why the Boston Bruins were able to have that sort of that renaissance in the late 2010s into the 2020s. Because remember, myself in 2017 and a lot of others left that team for dead after missing the playoffs 2 years in a row. And when they made that coaching change, they really turned their fortunes around and found themselves playing in the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years later.
Right. And that's the thing. That's another point too. It's like, okay, who did Jim Montgomery succeed? It was Bruce Cassidy. Where did Bruce Cassidy go right afterwards? The Vegas Golden Knights. First season with the Vegas Golden Knights, wins the Stanley Cup. Now, I'm not saying that that's totally on Bruce Cassidy, but I also disagreed with firing Bruce Cassidy at the time when Cam Neely did it. And
that was all Bergeron. Bergeron didn't like Cassidy.
Right. And true too. But you've got Boston Bruins general manager Don Sweeney now saying like, this is going to be the wake-up call for Boston. Nobody is safe, this and that. Sure, nobody is safe. Let's go with that narrative. I don't see them trading Brad Marchand. I don't see them going and moving Charlie McAvoy. I don't see them going and moving David Pastrnak or anybody like that. They're not what's the wake-up call? You're going to trade Pavel Zacha? Oh no. It's like there's nothing right now that I can say with regards to the Boston Bruins that gives me a ton of hope, but you hope that David Pastrnak starts turning it around because he seemed quite remorseful in a presser when talking in regards to Jim Montgomery being fired. He definitely seems like a player that's quite upset over this and could be impacted by this move. But ultimately, this is on a few players here. I'm looking at the stats on hockeyreference.com, another plug for Hockey Reference, but you've got a few players right now that just cannot stay out of the box. Charlie McAvoy is your biggest asset on defense, but he has 26 penalty minutes. Nikita Zadorov is supposed to be one of your biggest new assets on defense, even though he's playing bottom four pairing minutes, but he currently has 46 penalty minutes, which leads the entire NHL. You're not winning games when you're in the penalty box that often. This is a team that is playing carelessly. They're playing undisciplined hockey, and they need to clean it up. And maybe firing Jim Montgomery and changing the culture and really kind of policing on ice activity will help, but they need to actually perform on the ice first. Looking down at some of the stats here, you only have two players with double-digit points at the moment, and that's David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand, and that's still not much to write home about at the moment. Your leading goal scorer on Boston right now is David Pastrnak with 8 goals. They're not finding the back of the net, and they're also not stopping the puck either right now. They have a minus 21 goal differential in the Atlantic Division. They have the worst goal differential in the entire Atlantic. And they have the second worst goal differential in the entire Eastern Conference right now behind the Pittsburgh Penguins, who currently lead with a minus 26 goal differential. Boston needs to clean it up, and maybe the coaching change is the catalyst that they need, but maybe it's not. It's kind of tough to say. It's kind of tough to see. Yeah, I'm going to move on from here. Let's talk stat leaders in the NHL. I'm going to share my screen courtesy of NHL.com again, just because, as I mentioned in our last episode, I really like their interactive display in general. If you want to play around with it on NHL.com, you are more than welcome to, but I'll project things here just so that way, ease of life. Currently leading points in the NHL, no shocks here. Nathan MacKinnon in first place with 34 points thus far. Kirill Kaprizov with 33 points thus far. And a bit of a surprise in third place right now, Martin Necas, 30 points in 18 games thus far for the Carolina Hurricane. We can look at the rest of the list here as well in just a quick little gloss. Sam Reinhart currently has 29 points. Dylan Strome, 28 points. Jack Eichel, 28 points as well. Cale Makar, we'll come back to that name in just a second, 27 points as well. Mikko Rantanen with 27 points too. Leon Draisaitl with 27 points as well. And Nikita Kucherov with 26 points too. Currently leading the NHL in goals, as I mentioned before, is Alexander Ovechkin, but likely to take his spot over the next few games. We've got a few candidates for that. Sam Reinhart and Leon Draisaitl currently have 14 points. Kirill Kaprizov and Willie Nylander with 13 goals as well. Mikko Rantanen, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Connor McMichael, and Cole Caulfield all have 12 goals as well. And there are, I think, one or two more players with 12 goals. Also, the assist leaders, too, for anybody that's curious in that regard as well. Nathan McKinnon with 27 assists. Jack Eichel with 23 assists. Dylan Strome with 22. Kirill Kaprizov with 20. Mitch Marner with 20. Martin Necas with 19. Cale Makar with 19. Josh Morrissey with 17 assists as well. Jesper Bratt with 16 assists. And Anze Kopitar with 16 assists. Looking at the goaltending leaders, as I mentioned before, Philip Gustafsson has the best save, goals against average in the NHL with 2.07. Following him is Andrei Vasilevsky with 2.13. Anthony Stolarz of the Toronto Maple Leafs with a 2.18 goals against at the moment. Connor Hellebuck with a 2.20 goals against average. Could he be a repeat Vezina winner at year's end? Who knows? Jake Ottinger with a 2.25 goals against average. Pierre Kachekov with a 2.30 goals against. Jake Allen with a 2.30 goals against. Joey Decord, also of the Seattle Kraken, with a 2.31 goals against. Dustin Wolf of the Calgary Flames with a 2.36 goals against. And David Riddick with a 2.37 goals against average as well. Save percentage leaders in the NHL, Anthony Stolarz with a 927 save percentage. Philip Gustafsson, as I mentioned before, a 926 goals against. Save percentage, rather. Dustin Wolf with a 925 save percentage. Lucas Dostal with a 924 save percentage. Connor Hellebuck with a 923. Joey Decord also with a 923. Cam Talbot with a 920. He was a player I was going to mention before for Detroit. For Detroit, their problems have not been for lack of trying. Cam Talbot is a hidden gem on the Detroit Red Wings right now. Andrei Vasilevsky with a 919 save percentage. Jake Ottinger with a 916 save percentage. And Jusei Saros with a 916 save percentage as well. Tom, I'll mention it real quick. With a lot of these stat leaders, is there anybody that kind of jumps out at you at the moment when looking at these stats?
It's a little too early to tell, and the reason being is with these goalie leaders is that there's just a lot of split games so far as well. So
yeah, like the biggest one I would take with a big grain of salt is, like, for instance, Anthony Stolarz. We always see, 1B or backup goaltenders with higher goals against and save percentages at the moment. It's also with the caveat for goaltenders is they at the moment had to have played 7 games or more to kind of register on this list. But even if you've registered 7 games up to this point, it's still a small sample size.
But that means, if you registered 7 games and you've only played 7 games, that means your other goalie on the other team might have played 13. Like I was looking at it before I went more in depth. I see Jonathan Quick's name up there, and I love the guy, but he's not the starter. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I look at it now and I'm going, yes, okay, but it's just it's the sample size is drawn from a 7 games or more, and that's all over the place. So I think it's maybe just a little too early for it. But I mean, like I said, Stolarz it's up there, and Toronto, tip my cap to the Leafs, are having a good year. Maybe not a wow factor for me just yet, but they're having a decent start to the year. They are actually in first place right now in their division. But the Maple Leafs, like the Hurricanes, show me something in the springtime.
Yeah. For me, some things that jump out to me, Colorado is starting to slowly break themselves out of this funk that they've been in to start the season. And you've got some encouraging numbers here. Nathan McKinnon with 34 points, Mikko Rantanen with 27 points as well. But the big one that jumps out to me is Cale Makar with 27 points as well. And I want to scroll down here to defensive stats at the moment. Cale Makar currently leads all defensemen at the moment with 27 points. And it feels pretty distant behind him is Quinn Hughes and Josh Morrissey with 19 points behind him at the moment. Cale Makar has really started to separate himself amongst all defensemen. And as Tom mentioned in our previous episode, could we be talking about Cale Makar over the course of the season as maybe a player to watch for the Art Ross Trophy towards the end of the year? He's not that far out at the moment.
Yeah, he's actually cooled off a little bit though. But the one thing I can say for Colorado now is having Val Nichushkin back solidifies their forward depth, which may take the offensive responsibilities a little bit more off Cale Makar's shoulders. Now, obviously, Nichushkin has only played 2 games and he hasn't done anything yet, but it still definitely helps their top 6. It definitely solidifies their top 6 even more. Now, I don't know if this is a Stanley Cup team like 3 years ago, but I think Makar this year will probably win himself another Norris. But as far as having a Bobby Orr-esque Art Ross Trophy winning season, I think maybe my thoughts on that have calmed down a little bit as the separation is starting to become a little more pronounced. And then all you need now is Connor McDavid to go on a heat or 2, and then that could really, really extinguish that fire.
Yeah. No, agreed there. The other player I wanted to point out here as somebody that really kind of jumped out to me was Martin Necas, and he's been a player that I've been kind of monitoring for the past few years in Carolina. And I've always known that he's had the talent and that he's had the pieces to put it together. But I guess what really kind of surprised me is like when we talk about the younger players on Carolina, talking about Martin Necas, talking about Andrei Svechnikov, Seth Jarvis, I always thought of like Martin Necas as kind of like the reliable guy that, will, get to, between 75 to 82 points, be close to a point per game, but just be reliable overall. Like Svechnikov's the more flashy player. Seth Jarvis is the guy that's going to go down in the dirty areas to really kind of get some, dirty goals. Martin Necas has really kind of separated himself from the pack overall and is a big reason why Carolina currently sits in first place. He is far and away the points leader for the Carolina Hurricanes right now with 30 points in 18 games. So real jump out to me there. Another one that jumps out to me as well is Jack Eichel. And I think one of the biggest difference makers for Vegas at the start of this year has been the health factor overall of their team. This is a team that has had players with health concerns in the past. Looking at guys like Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, Tomas Hertel, guys that it feels like sometimes can't quite catch a break, staying on the ice. And it's good to see that when you have a guy like Jack Eichel that they spent a lot of assets to go and get, be able to play so far a full season thus far, just how valuable he is for your team. And Jack Eichel is one of the most valuable players right now for the Vegas Golden Knights with 28 points in I think 18 games played at the moment, I believe. I'm actually going to confirm that right now. 19 games played, my bad. But he's a major reason why Vegas is off to the start that they're off to right now. And then Sam Reinhart earning his contract with 29 points as well is another thing I wanted to mention as well. I think he is another big X factor right now for the Florida Panthers in their success at the moment. All right, so we're going to look away from stat leaders here, just like we did on last episode. We're getting close to Thanksgiving here, which if we don't get the chance to say this before we break, happy Thanksgiving, because we might be coming to you after Thanksgiving at this point. I wanted to talk about news items to keep an eye on as we roll on into the beginning of December. So, Tom, I'm going to start here with you. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. What are some news headlines around the NHL or things to kind of keep in mind going into the month of December that you feel like NHL fans should be keeping an eye on?
Well, obviously, we spoke about the failures in Nashville and what may happen with them, who may get traded, who may not, what they may do, where Jim Montgomery may go. That's a whole nother one. Definitely something to think about. Something else coming up. We have the World Juniors coming up, one of my favorite things in the world. The rosters that will come out fairly soon. They're already doing projected rosters. That's something to keep an eye on. This year, the World Juniors, I believe, is in Canada. I'm just going to look real fast. Hold on. Yeah, it's in Ottawa this year, so that's great. So it will be watchable by us in the Eastern time zone. Always look forward to that tournament. It's going to be great. It's been in Ottawa before. They've always done a great job. So the World Juniors, another thing to look at. And like I said, just more and more looking at what they may do with this Four Nations. And really just some tight races as well. Now, I look at the Pacific Division, for example. We were just talking about Vegas and Jack Eichel, and they've held up their end of the bargain, and he's having a great go of it. And Vegas, 11-6-2, 24 points in first place right now. But slowly but surely, you have the Edmonton Oilers and Vancouver Canucks slowly climbing up that ladder. And it's going to be really interesting to see if they if they bump Calgary and LA out of those second and third slots. It's going to be interesting to see where that division goes, because Vegas is 24 points right now. Edmonton is 22. Vancouver is 21. If they climb up and bump those teams, it's going to be an interesting three-legged race between those three in the Pacific Division. It's going to be a war in that division, and it's going to be great to see when those teams play each other. There should be a lot of good games and a lot of good matchups. Edmonton and Vancouver is already a rivalry. Vegas and Edmonton kind of has become one, and now it's going to be interesting to see what happens when Vancouver and Vegas line up with each other as well.
Yeah. For me, a couple things to watch here. With the Washington Capitals losing Alex Ovechkin, they're going to be a team to kind of watch and see where they kind of find themselves in the standings once we get to Christmas time, because that could potentially be the earliest that we see Alex Ovechkin again. That could be a nice little present under the tree for Washington Capitals fans if he's able to come back by Christmas. I think realistically, though, I think we see Alex Ovechkin again maybe around closer to New Year's, like very beginning of 2025. I don't think the Capitals are going to try to rush a 39-year-old player who's trying to play as long as he can to break Wayne Gretzky's goal record back too soon and run the risk of his career being cut short. I just don't see that. But you find yourself in a very unique situation where Washington has found themselves in second place in the Metropolitan Division. So Alex Ovechkin is certainly going to want to get onto the ice, get back onto the ice sooner rather than later. So it's going to be interesting to see where they are in the standings once he comes back. Like I said, Washington currently sits with 27 points in the Metropolitan Division, but they're only separated by 2 points between third and fourth right now. New Jersey has 1 point behind them, and they're currently winning against Carolina right now 2-1. So if they win tonight, they will more than likely leapfrog them in the standings. And then the New York Rangers are 2 points behind Washington right now. And both teams, the Devils and the Rangers, in their last 10 are 7-3 in their last 10. If they continue their hot play as of late, I could see both of those teams leapfrogging Washington if they can't keep up their momentum. And if those players that I mentioned before, and Andrew Mangiapane and Pierre-Luc Dubois, don't step up in Alex Ovechkin's place and replace the production that he gave to start the season, I think Washington could be in big trouble if they're not careful. Other things
Here's
to
what
monitor.
I'll say, though, real quick on that.
Yeah.
The fact is that if these teams in the Atlantic, like we had previously alluded to, Detroit and Boston, if they don't get their you-know-what together, then all Washington may have to do is just play for a wild card spot, just play for that first wild card spot and not worry about it.
True, too.
If they can build up enough separation, if they can just keep their points up versus the weaker teams in the Atlantic, they may just be sitting pretty in that wild card spot and just, sit there and see what happens.
Yeah. Other things I would kind of keep an eye on as well. You should be definitely monitoring teams with coaches who could be on the hot seat at the moment. We mentioned the Detroit Red Wings. I think they're a candidate that could be looking for a coaching change if things don't turn around quickly. The Nashville Predators, as we mentioned before, if they keep underperforming, I think the first scapegoat could inevitably be Andrew Brunette, unfortunately. The other team I'm going to mention here that, maybe should be, kept an eye on are the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't think they would fire Mike Sullivan mid-season, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. And if they're still underperforming like this and do not trade pieces instead, then Mike Sullivan could be the first scapegoat out. And that would be another interesting coach that could be floating out into the ether. Just like I said before, keep an eye out on Jim Montgomery and seeing if he ends up getting a job quickly. And that could be really interesting to see if he ends up getting a coaching job, quick out of the gate. And lastly, World Juniors rosters are going to be finalized soon. And we're starting to see little murmurs that we could be getting the World Showcase rosters soon for February. So that's going to be another thing to monitor as well going into December, and kind of like seeing what Team Canada, Team USA could end up looking like. And that's something that we're probably going to be talking about quite a bit and analyzing once those rosters come out. But let's round things out for our episode here. It's time for our question of the day. And I will keep this question of the day simple and relate it back to what we were talking about before. Tom, I'm putting you on the spot here because normally we plan these questions in advance, but I'm just going to drop you on the spot here. Do the Nashville Predators turn this season around?
No.
Ooh, interesting.
No.
How come?
No, and I'm going to say why. They have shown me nothing. Every game I have watched with them, they have shown me nothing. They look lost out there. Nobody seems to know where each other's supposed to be. They look like they have forgotten how to play hockey, all of them. And you know what the funny part about it is? It's like I almost liken it to when Detroit brought in Hull and Robitaille, and I use that reference all the time, and I hate that I use it. But I even remember Steve Yzerman and Brendan Shanahan sat the guys down and said, hey, you know what you're here to do, right? You know what we're here to do? Yeah, no problem. Did these guys talk in the offseason, Forsberg and O'Reilly? Did they sit down and talk to these guys? Say what you will, man. March or so, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points in 20 games. Not good enough. Stamkos, 6 goals, 4 assists, 10 points in 20 games. Not good enough. The whole thing is not good enough. Roman Josi, 14 points in 20 games. Okay, he's holding up his end of the bargain. Brady Shea, 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points, 20 games played, and they gave him a boatload of a deal. I said that these deals were going to bite them in the you-know-what over the summer. But I didn't think it's going to be this quick. But I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think they turn it around, and I think you're going to see some faces in new homes by the end of the season, depending on who would take them. A couple weeks ago, especially after the Winnipeg Ranger game, I was screaming, trade Zibanejad straight up for Stamkos. Zibanejad's starting to play hockey again, so maybe I don't want that anymore. And Steven Stamkos, -14. Jonathan Marchessault, -12. The goal scoring's not there. Trotz wanted them to be this basically another Golden Knights and Panthers freewheeling team, no tax state, entertaining hockey, play big, play fast, score a lot of goals, and they've done anything but it. And like I said, my prediction was that they probably wouldn't win a cup, but they maybe get to a finals. That's not going to happen. And I said I think the no tax sign big names bubble is finally bursting with these guys.
I'm going to stay painfully optimistic in regards to the Nashville Predators. And question here is, do the Nashville Predators turn it around? I'd like to think they do, but it's not going to be without some form of casualty first. Whether it's Andrew Brunette getting the big fat boot, or whether there is a trade that happens that kind of gives a jolt to this team. But something's got to give in Nashville. Ultimately, this team is too talented not to be successful.
They need another center. Everybody was saying that Tommy Novak wasn't going to be able to carry the load with that second line center with Stamkos and Marchessault on the line. Don't know why they don't put Stamkos back in the middle, but I'm not the coach. And soon enough, Brunette might not be the coach either.
It's going to be interesting to see. But guys, what do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree with our takes? Let us know down in the comment section below, and make sure you subscribe down below, youtube.com/NHL on I-80 Sports, and drop a like if you like our content as well. But more importantly, join the conversation. Let us know what you guys think of some of your favorite teams. Does Nashville turn it around, or do they continue on into mediocrity? We'd love to hear from you guys down below. And yeah, so we might not see you guys until right after Thanksgiving. Or maybe we do. We'll see what happens. But until then, I'm Brian. He's Tom. This has been our first quarter report in the NHL in 2024 on I-80 Sports.